Today we're going to be looking at the anime adaptation of The Promised Neverland, one of my favorite manga currently running in Shonen Jump at the moment, and probably one of the best anime of this season. I'm Nate.
And I'm Will.
And this is my Otaku Backlog. Let's go. Okay, so this is a currently running manga in Shonen Jump at the moment. It's like the number 2 or number 3 spot in terms of how popular it is. It's like right behind One Piece and around Dr. Stone at the moment, which is another property running right now.
Honestly, that blows my mind. I mean, the fact that it kind of came... I'd never heard about it until you told me about it not long ago. Like after I think it was like the 3rd episode. And to see it take such a high spot in Shonen Jump. They have so many properties that are, so well known.
Especially because I feel like Shonen Jump is kind of like it's kind of like, if you look at it, it's more like a battle, like it's become more like, it's more known for like Naruto and Bleach and, well, less Bleach, but like One Piece, Naruto.
There's definitely like a common thread to most Shonen Jump anime.
And like the closest I can think of this series is like to Death Note. Like everyone was calling this the new Death Note. Which,
I mean, I can totally see that. There's so much psychological...
There's a lot of mind games going on in it, and it's about outsmarting the opponent, but however, instead of like just two genius people, it's more like some kids versus an adult who has already been in their situation before. So it's like...
so hard to talk too much about it, because you don't want to give away too much. It's such a unique story. The writing is so intense. And it's, like you said, it's so psychological that it's like, you almost can't talk about it without giving away too much.
No, and it's one of those things where just watch the first episode and you'll understand what we mean by, like, you need to watch this show, because the first episode will grab you, because you'll understand immediately what's going on, what's at stake, and yeah, it'll just watch the first episode, you'll be grabbed immediately, at least for me.
I know that usually... Nathan is kind of my go-to, who tells me, here's some new animes, check these ones out. I'm always asking him, what's a new anime to check out, or what's a new manga to read? And he'll tell me about them. And with Promised Neverland, I tried to ask him, okay, well, what's it about? And I remember you telling me,
I was just like, just watch the first episode.
Yeah, you're like, I can't tell you, it's totally going to ruin it. So it's hard for us to do this review, because we don't want to ruin it. But at the same time...
You just watch the first episode, you'll see. Now, okay, so what'd you think about the story? Because let's try to be as spoiler-free as possible, but overall, what did you think about the story?
Man, I thought the story was amazing. I mean, I'm definitely more of a typical Western audience when it comes for anime. Sometimes the typical anime tropes and things like that kind of turn me off.
Because I noticed, like, when we were talking like a while back before even this started, it's like you're not really a huge fan of shonen, which is like...
No, not at all. Which is surprising, because this is like you said, this is one of my favorite anime of all time. I mean, hands down. And I was really surprised that it was on Shonen Jump, because it definitely feels more like a seinen, in the sense of the psychological games that they're playing on the background.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it's not. It's much more fast-paced. It's much more edge of your seat, which is kind of more typical to that shonen. They're building that up. The whole show is a constant build-up, and the pacing is incredible. And that's where a lot of the times I get lost on an anime, is when the pacing has issues, or when the show is just too goofy or something like that. And this show, the story, without going too much into the story, the intensity of the story and the situation that these kids are in is incredible.
No, I agree. Like, one thing I love about it is, like, it does feel like a lot like Death Note, in a sense of, like, it's just people battling out in terms of their wits. It's not obviously not super comparable to Death Note. It's just the most, like, it's the most comparable.
Tonality-wise.
Yeah, it's not the most comparable thing, but because it's a psychological, like, thriller in Shonen Jump, which even back then when Death Note came out, I imagine that was kind of a huge change, because it was not... I mean, what else was running? Naruto, Bleach, One Piece, maybe I don't know if Assassination Classroom was...
Dragon Ball Z was Shonen too, wasn't it?
Yeah, but that was like in the 90s.
Yeah.
Like that was 80s and that.
Like,
well,
those types
actually
of
not
shows,
even.
Those big shows,
80s
are what's synonymous with Shonen Jump. And I definitely think that they took a pretty...
Well, because Dragon Ball changed everything. However, I feel like now we're going into an era where Shonen Jump is like able to do more things. Like there's more like comedy romance stuff. Like I can't name it off the top of my head, but I know there's a bunch of different style of manga in Shonen that are in Shonen Jump that are actually becoming more popular.
Quite a bit, which is really cool because as anime becomes more popular worldwide, we're seeing different types of stories, which is interesting because what makes anime so special, what makes manga so special is the cultural differences in Japan and how different the stories that they tell are. But then to have them attempt to appeal to a more massive audience is, to me, it makes it a little more accessible, but it still has that heart of a story you would never hear from a Western storyteller.
I agree. Yeah, no, like the story, especially as it goes on, it just kind of like it gets crazy. I noticed that like every chapter I read in the first arc, especially, every chapter ended with a cliffhanger because they made it addicting to read because you're like, okay, I want to know what happens next. And even if like the payoff was kind of like, oh really, that's kind of dumb, you just kept reading it, get to the next cliffhanger, and you're like, I need to know what happens next.
So speaking of that, like the difference between, because I actually didn't read the manga, which
I did.
I know I should have for this episode
for the most part.
But having not read the anime, that kind of gives us a little bit of an interesting perspective difference between the two of us, because you read the manga first, correct?
Yeah, I actually read it even before the anime got announced.
Nice. So and then when you told me about the anime, I of course watched the anime first. I will definitely be checking out the manga, but I haven't cracked that yet. And so what I'm kind of wanted to segue into is, how do you think reading the manga first and then seeing the anime, what was your expectations going into it, and what did it meet your expectations? Did it excel above your expectations?
Yeah, so my personal opinion is, well, because I knew most of the things that happened, I honestly forgot several things that happened in the manga, because like I read it and I'm like, unless it was like something like, some character died or whatever, I'm like, I'm not going to remember it super well. Like I could honestly like maybe remember like half of the 1,000-Year Blood War because I was just trying to like blaze through that and for Bleach. But in terms of this, I was really looking forward to how the animation, how the anime studio was actually going to adapt it in terms of animation as well as music, because those are really important for me, especially music. I don't really care too much about the animation unless it's just like really like it's really there.
Bad.
Like if it's really bad, like I'm gonna say the Junji Ito collection, the anime is absolutely terrible in terms of just the animation, as well as the Berserk 2016, 2017. We're not going to talk about the 2016, 2017 Berserk.
Sore subject for both of us.
That'll be a topic for another video. But in I think that the art and animation in the Promised Neverland, the studio did a fantastic job, which I was really surprised because, I mean, I was optimistic because the director is the same guy who directed Elfen Lied.
Oh, I actually didn't know that.
Yeah,
wow.
Like I loved his directing in Elfen Lied, so I was like, okay, that's cool. But then I saw CloverWorks, which is a part of A1 Pictures, which I've never really been a huge fan of. They can do some good stuff. Like there's some cool like Sakuga moments in like Sword Art and other stuff like that. And I actually did like Darling in the Franxx and what they did with that, although they didn't do as good a job as the part that Trigger handled, but that's another thing. But I think that what they did with the Promised Neverland for animation wise, whenever it did go into the heavier Sakuga moments, like even the shocked reaction that Emma and Norman had at a certain moment in the story, the animation was very good. Like there was actually like some really like smooth movements, and even though it's like really like there's not super much movement, but however, like you can see the drawings that went into it. And it's just it helped build the atmosphere of like how scary it was for just the two of them, and it was fantastic. So the art and animation was fantastic.
What really stood out to me with the art and animation is, aside from the fact that it's modern, beautiful colors and high resolutions and things like that, like that's all beautiful, but really what stood out to me was the emotiveness of the facial expressions. Like they have these super intense mental moments where there's two characters or three characters having some kind of revelation or some kind of realization, and the way that they made the facial expressions when they would have close-ups on a face it was so cinematic, much more cinematic than a lot of anime I've seen. And I love the direction that they went with it, rather than doing CGI over the top.
Actually, you know, it's funny.
There's a lot of CGI in it, but it's just done so well.
The entire house is CGI, which is crazy because, like, if you just focus on it like at a still shot, it doesn't look like CG. But however, like, there's a lot of tracking shots and movement shots where they actually move throughout the house. And I was like,
and the 2D looks like 2D. It doesn't look like crap.
Well, yeah, no, the 2D looks great, and then the 3D, whenever it comes into play, it actually like helps build the atmosphere. It's almost like
it doesn't look out of place at all.
It has the uncanny valley effect to where it actually works with a thriller series. Where I don't know, like maybe I could just be talking like crazy, but however, I personally think the uncanny valleyness of the 3D in a 2D anime in a thriller and horror series might actually work better than if it was like. As much as I like Berserk as a horror, it doesn't work there.
It's hard to talk about Berserk with that because they really was such a dynamic difference.
I love Berserk, but
the two things. And that was one thing that really stood out to me on here is that, you know, I drag my feet when it comes to that 3D and computer animation adding into it. And when I saw this one, it was flawless. I didn't really notice that it was 3D until after the fact. I remember one scene specifically. I believe it was Ray. He's walking down a corridor, like a hallway.
Yeah, no, like they were walking. I think they were walking up the stairs, and you're like, "Oh, this is 3D."
Yeah, and you realize it, and it clicks, and then you're like, "Whoa, this actually looks really good."
No, like they actually like had the budget for making the house look very detailed and very nice, but not like jarring detailed. And actually, I wanted to bring up the art in the manga compared to the anime because the art of the manga, I can't pronounce his name. I'm so sorry, but
okay, you gotta try it.
Posuka Demizu. I think.
I could have done.
Yeah. So I love his art style because if you look at individual elements of like look at the art book, you see like random like you focus on little things like an apple or like a smaller part of a picture. It looks. I don't want to say like garbage, but however, it looks very, very rough, almost like he kind of just like circled it and then just left it. But however, if you look at the bigger picture, it's gorgeous. Like,
so like low detail on purpose.
It's low detail on purpose, but however, in service of the bigger picture. It's like it happens when you have like a ton of different things come together to make this amazingly gorgeous picture.
It's interesting because there's so much vast difference from one anime drawer or manga drawer, manga artist to another. Like for instance, you look at Akira, the manga. It's like insane amount of detail.
Oh yeah.
Or even Berserk. Insane amounts of detail in every picture. It works, but it's interesting to me that you pointed out that Promised Neverland has less detail because it's almost like making you focus on the story, on the writing,
it's like
on what's happening.
It's more detailed, but I want to say like less effort is put into smaller things on purpose to like in service of the bigger picture.
Stylistic choices.
It's almost like he kind of mastered the idea of doing something quickly but making it look gorgeous. It's weird. The way the art was actually adapted from the manga to the anime, I feel it was streamlined enough to kind of give it a, I don't want to say mainstream look, but however to make it look a little more presentable for people who aren't into the, I want to say super crazy art style of the manga. It's not like crazy, but it's just very weird.
It's unique, yeah. And I mean, obviously, having not read the manga and only seen a few panels that you've shown me here and there, I definitely see what you're talking about. How they definitely took some liberty and updated it a bit, but it didn't bother me at all. I mean, obviously, I didn't read the manga, so I could see how some people could take a little bit of offense with that, in wanting it to have the same aesthetic, but the heart and soul of it was so intact and so well presented that really it didn't bother me at all. And I totally get what you're saying, like how some of the super deformed stuff works, I think, in a more fast-paced, like action-based anime.
Yeah.
When you have that movement and then you'll show lines deforming and things, and that kind of adds that movement. Whereas this anime is much more introverted. And I think it lent itself to that pretty well.
Well, because like I feel like they saved a lot on the animation side whenever it was just like two characters talking. For like the crazier moments when like there was a lot more movement.
The revelations.
Well, yeah, that's just kind of like, yeah, like that's kind of what animation studios do most of the time. So whenever you look like a One Punch Man, there's also there's crazy, amazing action sequences, but there's also a lot of times when they're just sitting around and talking. But however, then again, there was a lot less of sitting around and talking because well, One Punch Man is more of an action series,
Totally,
as well as the fact that, and like, somehow they managed to pull together so much budget for that show, or just like so much talent for that. But
somebody definitely believed in it.
yeah.
And you know, another thing that really stood out to me, kind of going back to, I know we're getting a little bit off topic to, we were talking about sound and music and stuff, but I mean, one thing that, and animation, but one thing that really stood out to me is how, when you look at the anime as a whole, you realize that really there's not that many events that took place. Not that much really happened.
But however, like, each episode, like, put in so much detail into each,
And
like, each small step forward.
So much.
Yeah.
You know, that it was like, even though they only gave you that 1 inch more of information, it was enough to make your brain kind of go, if that's true, then what does that mean for the world?
Yeah. It's more like, it's just looking at, like, the story as a whole, like, you know, from, like, just, like, it just gets you more invested in everything.
Absolutely.
Like,
and
the
every
way
episode adds that little tiny bit of information that seems to make you reflect back on everything and question more and more. It's like the more information you get, the less you actually know.
Yeah, I agree. But so the art and animation is absolutely fantastic. At least,
Can't agree more.
Yeah, no, CloverWorks did a fantastic job. Like, a lot better than I thought they were going to. Like, just
Especially
because
for a studio that doesn't usually tackle shows of this content.
well,
you know, like,
CloverWorks, like, well, they broke off from A1 Pictures I think it was like last October, and A1.
it's a pretty new studio.
Yeah, I mean, A1 has made some good stuff. However, I didn't really know too much about like what CloverWorks were able to do. They did a fantastic job with this series. So, yeah. Now, I have to say right now, the soundtrack is masterful. Like, that, I think the best thing to come out of this, besides like, you know, the story that was originally in the manga, the music is absolutely fantastic. And I loved how the director did the same thing with Elfenlied, where there was a song in the anime that actually has plot significance, which like towards towards the end with Isabella, the song that she knew, the song that she like had growing up when she was
Ray.
Yeah.
I don't want to give away too much.
Yeah, no, there's things, but however, there's like plot significance with a certain song in the anime, and that song by itself, when I watched the first episode, ooh, it got me in the feels, dude.
And it's crazy how that song, fast forward from the first couple episodes all the way to the last episode, and what that song represents and what it actually means about the characters that know the song. I definitely didn't see that coming.
No, and like that's
I'm
what
surprised.
That's what I loved about Elfenlied. But however, that's also what I loved about this show too, because they actually brought significance to it.
Totally.
Yeah, no, it was absolutely fantastic. So besides that, there's other tracks like the confrontation between Ray and Norman, and I think it was like episode 2. That was just like insanely hype. However, it's literally just the two of them having a conversation. It's like the same thing that happened in Death Note when it was the potato chip scene.
Yeah. That's super intense. Like, it's almost like the use of silence sometimes too. You know what I mean?
It's just like, you know, you're in a tense conversation, even though, like, if you're looking at it from an objective point of view, it's like not much is happening, but like in their heads, like everything is just going crazy. The adrenaline's pumping.
Absolutely.
So like,
it's that withheld subtlety.
Yeah.
You know, of what is the underlying, what did the things that they're talking about mean? Again, for the world, what does it mean on a larger scale than just what they're talking about? And they do a lot of that. The dialogue in this is just incredible, and the fact that they made the music reflect on some of that content, again, goes back to that writing. It's like, number one, whoever wrote the music, wrote the content of that music, obviously was very much in tune with what the writing of the show is going to be, and it just matches
like
well.
I feel like he poured his heart and soul into it, and like the music for like the general OST is just fantastic. Like the whimsicalness of like the first episode when they're just like, you know, playing around playing tag, and then the intensity of Ray and Norman's conversation, and just several other moments in the show, and the subtle like sadness and somberness of like the song Isabella sang, because like she sang that when towards the end of episode 1. And then it actually became a song when Emma and Norman came back to the house. And it was like, I could tell it was like, was this the same song? And it showed later, yeah, it was the same song. And that actually made it more, it's like the leitmotif effect of like, you remember, like, I remember that melody. And
absolutely. Well, actually there was...
It brings everything together.
Two kind of statements that I want to share also is that, oh man, I'm totally pulling a blank on his name, but who's the guy who made Reservoir Dogs and Pulp Fiction and
Tarantino?
Yes, Quentin Tarantino. So there's a quote that Quentin Tarantino said when he was making Kill Bill, and it was specifically about the scene with I think it was like 88 gangster guys, 88 Yakuza were fighting Uma Thurman, and the music that he used. I watched an interview of him talking about the music and how he was talking about the right pairing of music and scene makes a scene memorable.
Oh yeah, I agree.
And Promised Neverland just nailed that.
Like, he was just like,
the music was so memorable, and it wasn't always predictable, but it was always so perfectly fit. It's just the tone and the ambiance that the music made you feel when the characters were uncomfortable and the music would come in, you would feel uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And you're like, this is weird music, it's making me uncomfortable. And then that coupled with what's happening, you're like, it just really is it's so involving, it so grabs you, and it's just so encapsulating.
Yeah, no, one thing I noticed, like, actually, like, just thinking about it now, like,
Engaging.
In the manga, like, there's a lot more of a tone shift between, like, the sadder and, like, heavier moments and also the more upbeat moments, where in the anime, it feels more, like, somber. But however, whenever there are moments of happiness that's not episode 1, it feels almost sad.
It does, because
Especially, I think it was, like, episode 9, before certain things happen. There's a flashback to one of the kids that is sick in bed, and there's, like, this really adorable scene of, like, the two of them just, like one of them's trying to hang out with the other person, like, when they're sick, and Mama's just like, get out the room. And it was adorable, but then it was really sad because the context of everything that was happening at the time. So it's like, I feel like the anime did a good job at making sure that it had a consistent tone, but however incorporating, like, goofier elements in service of that tone. But yeah.
It's so crazy to me because for someone like me, my tastes are a lot of times when I see those goofy moments or the lighthearted parts, it kind of, depending on the show, if I'm expecting it, but for a lot of the times that kind of just turns me off a bit.
Yeah.
And with the Promised Neverland, it did on the surface have some of that, but because the way they wrote it into the story, the way that the music dragged you in and painted the ambiance, painted the atmosphere, the way that it all worked together, just like you're saying, it made it so that even though something that you're watching something that may seem like this is a happy moment, contextually what's actually happening. And so, like you said, it totally does make it sad, and then you actually feel kind of weird
because you're
feeling happy for them.
Yeah.
It's like, it messes with you a little bit.
Yeah, no, like, that's what I love about the show. It's like, it actually has the ability to recontextualize a lot of things. Like, as soon as you realize what that song meant to Isabella, like, you go back to the first episode, you're like,
your opinion of her from the very get-go.
Yeah.
It humanizes her in a way that you definitely never saw her before.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because the whole show, I hated her until the very last episode.
Then you're like, I understand. This is really sad.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, the soundtrack and, like, the sound design as a whole was really good. Like, it sucked you into the show and made you, like, really invested in everything that happened. Overall, final thoughts?
I definitely would say that this anime ranks way up there for me. It's super accessible if you're not really, like, super well versed in anime tropes and things like that, or if you're not wanting to watch something that has a lot of fan service or anything like that. This is a great entry level, especially for Western audiences.
Yeah, no, like, I've shown this anime to, like, my relatives, like, my mom even watches this.
That's
like
crazy.
Like, that's
And
like,
awesome.
I know, it's like, I didn't think that she would actually, like, want to watch a show like this. Now she's actually watching Death Note. It's weird.
Well, that's cool too.
But yeah, no, like, everyone I've shown this show to, they love it. Especially, like, after the first episode, they're like, so can we watch the next one? And yeah, it just went on from there, and it's such a great show that I think that it's super accessible to people who aren't really into anime. Like if you have a friend that's like, I'm not really into anime, I don't really like it, and like the only anime I've known is like Inuyasha, Dragon Ball, Naruto, whatever, the typical like battle manga or battle anime.
We get it. We know why you might not be interested in those types of animes. That's kind of an otaku specific kind of thing.
It's more like if you're younger, then you're like, I want to watch something.
Or if you grew up with that kind of stuff.
If you're like, I'm watching like Disney or Nickelodeon, you're like, I want to watch something that's a little bit more awesome and fighty. Totally. Then you see like Naruto or Dragon Ball for the first time, you're like, yeah, this is awesome.
Totally.
But yeah, I think this
is another level. This is for adults. This is for a mature
This is
audience.
definitely for more like I don't want to say the Netflix crowd who watch like these super like bingey drama shows, because like I feel like that's becoming more popular now, especially.
Totally.
Like, however, yeah, no, I think it's become more accessible now. So I think that this show actually
at least more
works
well
really
respected and well received worldwide.
Yeah, like it's not like a crazy like otaku tropey show.
For instance, you mentioned Elfen Lied earlier. Elfen Lied, another great show, one of my favorites.
Oh, same here.
Definitely not like Promised Neverland. Not something that I could recommend to someone
absolutely
who is not a otaku.
That is like the trifecta of anime I cannot recommend to normal people.
It's
along
got
with
fan service. It's got gratuitous violence. It makes you really uncomfortable in weird ways.
Yeah.
It's different, and whereas this one makes you uncomfortable by putting you on the edge of your seat.
Yeah.
That one makes you uncomfortable by.
It makes you uncomfortable.
Stuff that's not okay.
It makes you like, okay, what's gonna happen? What's not like, oh god, this is disgusting, or like this is
disgusting. Yeah,
like,
definitely.
So I think that this anime is very like, well,
it's accessible.
It's accessible to like mainstream audiences, I feel, anyway.
And I mean, the fact that, like, for instance, the way I found out when you called me up and told me, check this thing out, check this anime out, and then immediately I called Jose, or a mutual friend of ours. You guys will meet him. And I go, oh, have you seen this anime? And he goes, yeah. Nathan told me about it. I've binge watched it. I'm current. And all of our friends, everybody you told, like, it wasn't like, oh, I'll check it out. Yeah, it's okay. It was like anyone who watched it got hooked.
Yeah.
Instantly.
No, that first episode was masterfully done.
Oh.
And even as someone who read the manga beforehand, I know that there's some people complaining online about, like, I read the manga and it wasn't that great. For me, I think that if you're like, I'm looking for... If I read the manga and I'm like, if I was like, I'm wanting to be mind blown by the plot again, it's not going to happen. Whereas if you're looking for, okay, what can the anime provide that the manga can't? The voice acting, the animation, the soundtrack, all of it is masterfully done. So I personally think that the anime adaptation is completely worth it. And if you decide to go back and read the manga, I'd say go for it, because I definitely want to reread the manga again. Especially,
I'll read it, especially after watching the anime and seeing what it is. I'll definitely be checking out the manga.
And we're definitely going to be looking forward to the next arc, in which every chapter is another cruel cliffhanger that won't be resolved for a very, very long time.
Yep, the promised cliffhanger. Every single episode leaves you on the end of your seat.
You're just like, so when's the next episode coming out?
And when it ends, I feel like when that last frame ends on every episode, you're pulling your hair out. You're just like, what? They reveal something.
And like the final episode the final episode actually had a cliffhanger of like, I'm wondering where they're going next, but it gave you the satisfying feeling of like, yeah, that was great.
Yeah, it gives you the resolution for the whole first season.
Yeah.
But it leaves enough of a mystery that you are like really not sure where the show's going to go.
Yeah.
And of course, for me not having read the manga, I have no clue.
Oh, and trust me, you're in for some surprises, my friend.
And that's another thing. I may wait to read the manga until after season 2.
Well, okay. Actually, just got recently announced for 2020. I'm not sure when in 2020, but yeah, hopefully they get both the same director and the same studio. Because at this point, just keep it the way it is. Don't pull a One Punch Man and decide to change studios and directors. Just keep it.
It's doing so well. So leave it, make your money. It's making good money. It's got a good thing. They just need to keep.
And what I've noticed, like especially with like, I want to say like Japanese properties, especially like manga properties, the best ones usually like the most popular ones tend to be really good. Yeah, so I hope you guys enjoyed. Check out The Promised Neverland. It's available on Hulu, Crunchyroll, Funimation, and High Dive.
Also, the anime is not available in dub right now. It is sub only.
It's actually airing on Toonami soon.
That's what I was gonna say. I guarantee they're gonna come out with a dub. The popularity of this will have it.
Oh yeah.
So if you need to wait for a dub, you can. But I do have to say, as a fan of dubs, and I usually watch dub and not sub, this anime, the sub is incredible. The the voice acting of the Japanese actors, I'm usually very annoyed by it. Here, Promised Neverland, it was not annoying. It was natural. It fit the characters. It was just super well done. So check out the sub, watch it. It's worth it. You'll get used to reading the subtitles. This show especially is very dialogue driven, so it works really well.
Yeah.
In sub.
No, I agree.
Check it out.
So yeah, stay tuned for more content. Let me know what you think about this whole thing in general, and hope you have a great day. This is my Otaku Backlog.
Absolutely.
Have a good day.
One last thing we can say is this is our first inaugural episode. Nathan and I are audio guys. We know our audio setup is not what we wanted it right now, but when it comes to video and lighting, we're pretty new to the game. So if anybody out there has got any tips or tricks for us, feel free to put it in the comments. We could use your help.
Also, we mentioned a bunch of different properties like Berserk, Elfen Lied, Bleach, whatever. Let me know what you want. Let us know what you want us to talk about next, because we can definitely talk your ears off about a bunch of other stuff. So, yeah.
Absolutely. We've got a lot of content planned for you guys. So interact. Stay tuned.
All right. Catch you guys later.